Okay, it looks like we're on.
Okay. All right, well then why don't we get started. It is 7:02 p.m. and I'll call this meeting of the Old Saybrook Board of Education to order. And we can start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Awesome.
Oh, that's funny.
To the flag of the United States of
America
and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty,
justice for all.
Justice for all.
That was excellent, Trent. It's the small things, right?
It's taken me 3 meetings to get that working, but I finally got it.
Well done.
I love it. Nice job. So Karen isn't with us tonight, so the role of Karen will be played by me. And I definitely hope that I can do her justice. She always does such an excellent job reading things. So hopefully I will at least be passable. So we're going to start off this evening with a proclamation for Teacher Appreciation Week, which is this week. Or this coming week, I'm sorry. And so I'm going to read the proclamation for our teachers. On behalf of the Old Saybrook Board of Education and the Old Saybrook Public Schools District, I would like to recognize Monday, May 2nd, 2022 through Friday, May 6th, 2022 as National Teacher Appreciation Week. Throughout their careers, teachers influence the lives of hundreds of students. Their love of a particular subject area and their desire to pass on their knowledge to the next generation of voters, parents, workers, and world leaders creates a ripple effect across time that positively impacts the future of our community, our state, and our union. To be a teacher is to also be a role model, a mentor, a counselor, and an advocate for the youth of our community. This responsibility is taken on daily and most willingly by our classroom leaders who model maturity, right action, and excitement for lifelong learning through every lesson, lecture, and presentation. There is no profession in existence that has a more direct impact on the shaping of young lives, and the trust we put into the hands of our teachers to influence those lives for the betterment of the world is an honor and a privilege that we bestow upon our faculty, relying on them to inspire our children to achieve at the highest level in all fields. On this day, Tuesday, April 26, 2022, the Old Saybrook Board of Education formally commends the teachers employed by our district. So thank you, teachers. I hope you're out there listening. We love you and appreciate you. All right, so moving on to the next part of our agenda. Trent, I don't see anybody in the audience. Am I missing anything? Is anyone out there from the audience of citizens that wishes to address the board?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, so we move to McKenna and Matthew for our reports from our Student Board of Education representatives.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so we have AP tests that are coming up soon. I think it starts on May 2nd and will continue through the following weeks. I know next week is a huge week for it. I'm not sure if there are any the following week, but everyone has a good amount of AP tests coming up. Prom tickets also went on sale yesterday, and so permission slips are being brought in, permission slips to bring guests, that kind of thing. People are paying their ticket and getting excited for prom.
And for sports, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible because there's a lot of sports. So track and field's doing pretty well. We were supposed to have a meet today, but it'll be tomorrow instead. Baseball is doing pretty well. They're 6-2. Softball is unfortunately still 0-5. They're not doing so well. Girls lacrosse, however, is doing well, and their record is 7-0. And boys lacrosse, they're 3-4. They're much better than last year, which we'll take that. So boys tennis is 1-4. Girls tennis is actually getting better with their record being 3-3. And golf, so I went on the golf CIAC website, and they have the scoring, which I have no idea how it works. I know like individual scoring for golf, but I don't know how it works for the team. So we currently have 53 3.25, which is basically in the middle of Division 3, with Portland at the number 1 position with 29, so the lower score is better, and East Hampton in last at a 169.8 average. So that's just for reference. You could do with those numbers what you want. So that's it for the report.
Awesome. Thank you. You did better than I could have. I couldn't have made sense out of that either. Do we have any questions for our student representatives?
They know where the prom's going to be?
Yeah, it's at Water's Edge in Westbrook.
Lovely.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both for your reports. All right, moving on to correspondence. You'll see on the notebook this evening, there was correspondence in regards to a state proclamation in regards to our food service, school nutrition programs, and its recognition from the state being passed along to our school nutrition team. And I won't read the state's proclamation because there's a lot of whereases and therefores. But it's an appreciation, for the folks that support our children and their healthy eating while they're with us during the school day and beyond. So hopefully you all could take some time to read that. Any questions about our correspondence? Okay. Easy peasy. All right, so moving on, I'd like a motion to approve our regular meeting minutes from April the 5th. A move by Eileen, second by Alan. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All righty, so moved. All right, so first up on our agenda this evening is a discussion in regards to bid waivers. And if I can get over to the bid waivers document, we'll need a motion if we want to get our discussion started. The proposed motion is to approve the requested bid waivers for air conditioning and wireless access point installation as presented. Does anyone want to make that motion? Eileen made that motion. Do we have a second for that? Seconded by Trevor, thank you. All right, so let's open up discussion and I'll turn it over to Julie and Jan.
And I'm going to ask Julie to give you the details on this. This is really her work. I just will start by saying we continue to live in interesting times, and doing business and working on any project of any kind continues to be difficult. So with that, Julie will explain the concepts behind the request for the bid waiver.
And I saw, Karina, that you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
My dog made me hit the thing because she was licking my hand. I will have a question after the presentation, but I want Julie to make her presentation first.
So Pepper has a question. Okay. All right, we'll get back to Pepper's question. Go ahead, Julie.
That's great. So Jan, that was a good opener because I don't think in my career of 30 some odd years, I've ever seen the conditions that we currently are facing. And hence we have had to ask for some waivers that we might not have to, ask for in the past. So I'll just give you a very brief summary for each of them. The first one being the air conditioning. So if we were to order these today, we may have them by next May. So that gives you kind of an idea of why this has become important to get these in the queue. These are large units, 2 large units that will be going over to the Goodwin School in hopes that by next summer, we will have all the other pieces and parts for this project. This is a very lengthy project and a project that is segmented into a number of different pieces and parts because of the complexity of trying to retrofit a building while we're also trying to have school take place. Over the break, you probably saw a lot of dirt moved at Goodwin School. And that was kind of the beginning of getting ready to bring additional power into the building. So these 2 units, this is the cost of just the 2 huge chiller units that at this point in time are looking like they'll go to the rear of the building where they won't disturb anybody because they're loud. We believe putting them on the ground on pads is much better than putting them on rooftops, particularly because Goodwin is an old school and weight is an issue. You know, they have to be moved with a crane, so they're quite heavy. So a lot of work went into designing where these would go. And so because of the time issue, we would be looking for a waiver to get those ordered right away. So that's the first waiver. I don't know if you want me to stop there,
Yeah.
Tara, or?
Yeah, why don't we pause there and see if there's any questions specific to the air conditioning? Thanks, Julie. That was good. So questions in regards to the air conditioning part of the request? Go ahead, Karina and Pepper.
Yeah, now she can lick my hand and hit the hand. So my question is, so by waiving the bid process, that saves that time where you would have to request bid proposals from vendors, then review and go through that whole process. So it's really not that this particular vendor can get it faster. It's just that eliminating that process allows you to go ahead and order from this vendor.
That is a piece of it for sure. And the other part that I should mention is that they've done all of the design and engineering work as part of this process, which would be another step that we would have to pay for. We'd have to get an engineer in, they'd have to spec it, you know, design it and all of that. So there's multiple pieces and parts if we were to go through the bid process.
Okay, and so that's part of why you selected this vendor.
Yes, they do all of our HVAC work. They're very reliable. We have been extremely grateful because they were on top of the whole COVID thing with us. I mean, they just have a track record that I think it speaks for itself.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. George, go ahead. And you might be on double mute, George, because I can see you're talking.
Okay.
There we go. Better. Oh, still not better.
Okay. How about that?
Good.
Okay. Just a quick question. So when you're saying next summer, you're talking summer or May of 2023?
Yes, I am.
So at best, air conditioning going in at the fall of 2023 during that heat, if there is any heat.
I'm hoping.
Okay.
I'm hoping. Yep.
Right.
That
we
would
missed
be
that
the
window,
goal.
then we're talking the summer, late summer, early fall of 2023.
Yes, there'll be
Okay.
quite a bit of work done over next summer, and some work we're going to do this summer. We're going to do as much of the interior work as we can, a lot of piping, a lot of, duct work and things that have to, be installed, not to mention all of the, what we call switch gear, the gear that's going inside the building to run this air conditioning has also a very long lead time. So we'll be getting ready for all of those pieces and parts to fit together.
Alan, go ahead. You had a question?
So Julie and Jan brought this up at the facilities meeting recently, and one of the questions was the funding. So if you could talk a little to the funding aspect of that, Julie and Jan, that'd be great.
Sure. So this particular piece of the project, we anticipate funding out of the ESSER funds. So this it could be bought out of year-end funds. If we have funding available at the end of the year, we can come back to the board. But it also can be bought out of ESSER. We're going to use all of the ESSER funds either way. So it really is a matter of end of the year funds and whether or not we decide this is a good, expenditure, but at least we can get the order placed.
Go ahead, Jan. I see your hand up.
I just want to add that we are tracking some pieces of legislation. I actually wrote some testimony last week, which I included in my board report because there have been a number of HVAC bills that are being discussed. We thought we had done a pretty good job of stopping one that was going to require us to implement HVAC. No, it's not the way it reads. It requires us to meet a particular standard on air quality in our schools, which would be judged by OSHA and Department of Labor. So you can imagine how strict those standards would be on a very short timeline. that bill has been gutted, but replaced with one that doesn't extend the timeline by much and continues to add accountabilities where schools may need to close down if they receive or they're at a certain temperature. And one of the things that keeps you in this current bill, which is not law yet, but in the current bill, one of the things that keeps the doors open is if you have the air conditioning project underway. So if you've applied for it and you're moving forward, then you can keep going because you're trying to resolve the problem. So I think the fact that we've jumped ahead of that for one school and are going to continue that process for the others, even though funding is still a question, I think it's important that we start pushing through it quickly because it's all going to, if this legislation goes through, and it looks like it's going to, because it's very late in the session, we're going to be not only up against those requirements, but we're also going to be competing for the same products that are already 12 months out and the same vendors who don't have time to do that work now. So the more we get done now, the more we get rolling now, the better off we are.
Julie and Jan, thank you for that. I think it's impressive it's impressing upon me anyway, and I'm sure everyone else on the board, that the costs are only going to go up, right? I mean, I think you've made that point. They're not going down anytime soon. So the sooner we get into this, it seems to make sense for all the reasons that Jan and Julie stated already. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks, Jan. George, I see you have a question.
Am I unmuted?
You're good.
Thank you. So just to follow up on Alan's question to Julie about the funding for this AC, and so I mean I'm going to jump right into her report. The little, you wrote a little bit about the what's the right word to use, unexpended funds at the end of the year, and how some of that would be passed on to projects and so on. And I'm a little bit confused about that, but you had this table, and I was under the impression that some of the unexpended funds will be going to the air conditioning. So
yes. So there are pieces and parts of funding for this project because this project is upwards of $2 million at this point.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea. I mean, when it started, as Jan was talking, we were in the $1.2, $1.4 million range. I'll give you a very simple example. We ordered pipe to go in the ground last week that was estimated when we started this project at about 15 or 16,000, and it cost us 34,000. That's one little tiny piece of this project. So we know that we are going to expend a lot more than what the original prices were, which is why, Jan emphasized we really want to get started sooner than later. So to your point, George, we're hoping to put a piece of the unexpended balance aside. We know we have some ESSER funds. We know we had earmarked some funds in the off-budget accounts. We also know that there's funds earmarked in the sinking fund. So we are probably going to have to tap all of those resources to finish this project.
Right, very good. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jan.
Just going to add context again, since George asked the question. If this piece of legislation that is being discussed goes through, future HVAC projects would be reimbursable through bonding. But our reimbursement rate in Old Saybrook is about 20%. So we're not going to realize a lot of money, and that won't go into effect yet. So you may see us coming to you to talk about future air conditioning projects and funding it slightly differently because we want to take advantage of that 20% if that goes into effect for next year.
Thanks, Jan. Trevor, I see your hand up.
Hi, thanks, Tara. Is there a portion of the money that has to be spent or we lose it this year?
So are you referring to the regular budget, Trevor, or are you referring?
I'm thinking of the whole project. Is there a portion that has to be spent now or ordered now, or we lose it or not?
So the ESSER funds are good through next summer or actually almost next fall, early fall. And then the other funds that we are looking to hopefully secure will be unexpended funds from the year-end balance, which hopefully will the town will be able to put some of those funds aside for us. And then the other 2 pots of money, there's actually 4 sources of funding that we're talking about, are already set aside. Those funds already exist. So the answer is not really. We wouldn't necessarily, the only funds we could potentially lose would be if the unexpended balance does not get designated to the Board of Education for these projects.
Okay.
Thanks, Trevor. Alan, go ahead.
Just quick follow-up question to Jan's comment about the 20% funding that may come down the road. Can we apply retroactively to get reimbursed for that if our project starts before a certain time?
It's
No.
going to depend.
I don't think that we could, but I think that it also depends on when projects get completed. I think that might be part of it, but certainly the other 2 schools, we might want to go that route. We might want to go that route. 20% is going to be, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, 20% could be a sizable chunk, but also, Jan, we don't even know how these grants will be written as to how we have to apply for reimbursement either.
So I think this one in particular is going to be school project bonding. So it now just allows you to do school projects to include HVAC. It used to be the school project had to be, renovated as new or new. This time it would be allowing simple HVAC projects to be included in that.
Yeah.
Currently.
And I think with our other 2 buildings, as we talked about earlier, when you and I discussed the funding, our normal reimbursement rate's about 27%, but because our buildings, it's all ratioed according to enrollment, and I think we would be significantly less than what our current reimbursement rate would be, because you're only allowed so much per student.
2021 is the new one. So yeah, we have gone down.
Yeah. And it'll be lower than that because we won't meet the guidelines of so it will be a small amount, but we can find out as things move along.
All right, why don't we move to the next piece, Julie, the Wi-Fi.
Hopefully this one will be a little easier. So this is literally a bid process doesn't make a whole lot of sense here, because let me tell you how this works. For this particular project, the items and the materials that are needed to complete it, if we were to go to any of the larger vendors that are authorized to sell to schools, they can go to the actual vendor for this product, and only one vendor can get the special pricing, which is what this vendor has done. So it wouldn't matter if we went out to bid, because nobody else can get this special pricing. The vendor will only give it to one authorized vendor who puts their hat in the ring, so to speak. So
they registered the deal. Yeah, they registered
Correct.
the deal and they were the first ones.
Correct. That's exactly right. So this one really is already sort of pre-bid, if you will, but I felt the amount, was so large that we felt you should really see it, just so that you're aware.
And they're able to source the devices, Julie?
Yes, they say they are able to source them. So we're gonna keep our fingers crossed.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a huge question mark, but they're telling us that they can.
Okay. Go ahead, Karina.
Thanks. So that what you just explained then is why the state contract would be more expensive, because they can't go to
Yep.
the vendor that has the special pricing.
Correct. That's
Okay.
exactly right. So they get a price. Sometimes state bids are not always your best deal. That's why we look at all these options, because,
Yeah.
and they also only put the bid out maybe once a year, sometimes twice a year. And things fluctuate pretty considerably. So,
So we don't necessarily know what the state bid would be, but we do know that because this vendor got the special pricing, that whatever the state's is not going to match this.
we actually we looked at state pricing. Because CDW, which is a big outfit that also is approved to provide to schools, gave us the state pricing. It was considerably more.
Wow. Thank you.
Any other questions about the second piece of the bid waivers? All right, any further discussion? All right, then since we have a motion on the floor and a second, all in favor of approving the bid waivers as presented, say aye or show your hands, aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved. Thank you very much, Julie. That was
Thank
easy to
you.
understand. Thank you. All right, so the next topic for discussion, and this is just discussion, we don't need any motions, is our professional development wrap up, and I'll hand this over to Jan and Amity.
We're going to turn it right over to Amity, who has prepared a presentation that summarizes many things that we have done this year in the area of professional development. I do want to commend not just Amity, but the entire district leadership team, because this year's professional development was very thoughtfully planned in advance during the summer months, but then we also at times pivoted to meet needs that arose during the year. And I think that it was a very successful year for professional development in district. Amity?
And Trent, I'm going to ask you if you could drive this slideshow for me, because my computer had to be wiped last week and I can't access anything on Zoom. So
Sure.
Trent,
Just
if you
give
could drive that,
me-
that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yep, just give me 1 second.
Thank you, sir. As Jan said, thank you, Jan. I appreciate the recognition of how hard folks work to make PD work really well this year. And really our focus tonight will be on looking at sort of the overview of all of the PD that we did, and also sort of how that professional development relates to achieving our strategic plan goals, and how we will set our goals for future professional learning. So Trent, you can head 2 slides in here, please. Right to connections to the strategic plan. We have our 3 strategic plan goals: equity, high quality instruction, and well-being. And because this is the first year of our strategic plan, a lot of our professional learning was focused on foundational knowledge building. So sort of learning about specific techniques and specific background information that we need to be able to achieve these goals, really that we'll be applying in the next several years. And also, this is the foundational year where we did some research and some looking outside of ourselves in order to understand more about how these things are done well in other places. From here, we'll really work to build that training of trainers kinds of situations so that we can do more of that work in-house. But in this first year of our strategic plan, we were looking for information from those beyond ourselves based on the research about what works best. Next slide, please. So this is our statistics and data slide. And the interesting part about this is that it looks very similar most years, except for our pandemic year. This slide has really been very, very similar. It's every year, it's educators from every department and school. The average number of workshops seems to always work out to be 2. And the cost of the professional development that is teacher specifically chosen is about $18,000. In fact, the dollar amount was so close that we actually double checked it to make sure that I wasn't using last year's number by accident. But no, this is this year's number. It just happens to work out that way, that it's very similar year after year. Next slide, please. These are the number of workshops by subject area, and you'll notice that they generally are about the proportionate to the size of the department, with the exception of possibly math, which has slightly fewer workshops for the size of the department across the district. And I really would attribute that to the amazing work of Stacey Anderson, our district math coach. She is our coach and coordinator, and she is available to teachers all the time. She does a tremendous amount of co-teaching and collaboration and sort of facilitating meetings and collaborations among individual department teachers in the department. And I really think that she contributes to our ability to not send people out to workshops, because they can get that right within our district itself. But the good news is that we are pretty much back to where we were in the early part of 1920 or in 1819. Next slide, please. Our challenges this year, the number one challenge was absolutely the availability of substitute teachers. It was incredibly challenging to get any professional learning done for a long period of time this year because we simply could not find substitutes to put in classrooms to allow teachers to avail themselves of those opportunities. And then consequently, balancing teacher absences from classrooms with the need for continuous professional learning. So we want to stay innovative, we want to stay cutting edge, but we also want teachers to stay in classrooms. And that is a constant balance. And without a significant pool of high quality substitute teachers, that is much harder. Next slide, please. On the upside, we had many successes. Within our 3 goals, we had a significant number of professional learning that supported each goal. We had multiple things that supported our equity goal, our equity guiding coalition. We finished finally training the vast majority, if not all, of our teachers in supporting the needs of emergent English speakers. And that was sort of that foundational course. It took years for us to actually make sure that we trained almost everyone, but we really got just about everyone there this year, finished that group. And then looking at supporting students with a variety of educational needs, Kathy Bai and her team work really hard to constantly support us with ongoing dyslexia training and other training that speaks to specific educational needs that students have. And then Goal 2, our focus on high quality instruction. We have had ongoing coaching by our instructional leadership team and those coaches, ongoing support for our coaching and coaching from our OWL friends. Our Open Way Learning folks have been really helpful to us throughout the year, and we've been building capacity to do that work internally in the future. And also our work with Columbia on particularly our workshops on formative assessment have been very helpful to that goal. And goal 3, again, Leah O'Connor she's been amazing with her coaching support for everybody across the district, and also the way that she was able to roll out DESA, the social emotional screener. And she's just been there as an ongoing collaboration and support for students and teachers as they work through that whole process. Next slide, please. And then another really important success to note, also to thank teachers, Teacher Appreciation Week coming up. This is really appropriate to look at this slide and think about what this means. Because we did not have subs for so much of the year, teachers were paid using federal grant funds for time spent on professional learning outside of the contractual workday. So when we couldn't get a project done or training done within the workday because we couldn't find subs, there were some times when we could do that, ask teachers to do that evenings or weekends, and then again during the summer. They did that last summer and they will do it again this summer. And that was really, really crucial that folks were willing to do that and that we had the funding from the ESSER grant to be able to pay them for their time to do that work. I don't know that we want to make that a constant thing, but I think that that's an opportunity for us when it is appropriate and we can access things like that federal grant funding. And if we want to continue that kind of work, we will need to look at what we do when the federal grant funding goes away. Next slide, please. And then our next steps, our next goals for 22-23, the instructional leadership team is really excited about renewing our focus on job embedded coaching. They love working with other teachers and being in classrooms and really supporting that work. And that's been really hard since March of 2020. And they're really excited to sort of refocus on coaching and to sort of draw the new ILT members into that training and think about what exactly it is to be an instructional leader. So they're excited about that work. We will also maintain the new learning that's supporting our strategic plan goals. But like I said, we want to really transition to building those in-house experts. We want to not be reliant on the support of others much beyond next year. And then we also want to continue to map our district-wide professional learning to target those goals across all schools. For the first time this year, we sat as a team, DLT and ILT, and mapped out the entire year's worth of professional development, all of the schools and all of the department meetings, and looked at what needed to be done. And the coherence that we achieved by doing that last summer was really helpful in getting some of the work done that we needed to get done. We didn't lose focus. We were able to kind of carry that through all the way through the end of the year. And I think we learned a lot more this year than we've learned in other years because of that coherence. And I believe that's the last slide. Are there questions? George.
Yep, go ahead, George.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So just a quick question, Amity. So when you were saying about the number of educators that participated in professional learning, and that the numbers for the 21-22 were essentially identical to the previous year. So essentially, the numbers for the past 2 years have been essentially identical. I mean, the number that you quoted was about 80 educators, and if I recall, the total number of teachers is about 140. Correct? And so that basically puts in about 60% of the people. My math is correct off the top of my head. It participated, which it's pretty good. I mean, but it's so two questions. Were you guys expecting a higher participation rate than 60? And the other question is it the same 60 that participates, or conversely, is it the same 40 that do not participate? Or it's essentially everybody participates, but over 2 years, everybody participates, but just people are busy in any particular year and so on.
It's interesting that you asked that, because that's one of the things that I've looked at before. Is it the same people who are always participating or always not participating? There are some people who every year avail themselves of workshops outside of the contractual professional development days. And yeah, so there are some people who always do that. But it seems as though, if I had to estimate, I would say that about 30% of that 60% who are participating in workshops outside the district, I think about 30% of that rotates. And so it really depends on the teacher's teaching load that year, the number of courses that are new to them, or the grade level that's new to them, and what they feel like they really need to learn and focus on. So, about 30% of the folks are the same folks who go all the time and are constantly learning and super excited about that. And then there are other folks who do it when they really feel that they have a particular learning need. And that is above and beyond the contractual professional learning, and above and beyond the coaching that we have built in. So I would be more concerned if there weren't already those 6 contractual days, plus every faculty meeting, every extended PD meeting after school, and every coaching session that they have with their instructional coaches. But because we have all of those things built in, I'm not concerned that only 60% are seeking outside workshops.
Yeah, fair point. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Go ahead, Eileen. And you're on mute.
We can see you talking, but I can't hear you.
No, I know. I should do the sign language thing. Anyway, so nice job, Amity. So one of my questions was in the statistics and data slide, it looks like there was an increase in those attending fine arts. Went up by 11. So I was just curious to know, is that something that someone else was, is it of interest because now we're integrating more of what we're doing in terms of the classroom, or is it just the art teachers that are going, or what's your thought?
It's actually been district-wide, and I think there are a number of contributing factors. So we have folks who are in different positions particularly in our music department, and so they wanted to do some additional professional learning. Our visual arts folks have been very involved with the open way learning and experiential learning integration. And so they've done a lot of work around that, and they've done work in the community around that. They really have been very, very active in professional learning this year. And we have such an amazing arts department, both performing and visual arts, that they get invited to conferences to speak. They get invited to participate in a number of, committees across the state and beyond. And because of that, there's more professional learning on their plates. I think it actually really speaks to the quality of the instruction that goes on in that department.
So I have another question. I was really interested in the training on multilingual and emergent English speakers, and I'm just curious, did you bring an outside consultant in to talk about best practices and how to go about integrating, their own language and how to get families involved? I was curious about that.
Yes, we did. We have partnered for many years, actually, since pre-COVID times. We've partnered with Southern Connecticut State University. They had a federal grant a number of years back to create a program that they call Training for All Teachers, which is it's a great title and also a horrible title because nobody understands what it is when you say that that's what you've done. But it is training that all teachers need in order to support our emergent English speakers, our multilingual learners. And it is a specific professor who we have contact with, and she can only train 25 teachers at a time. And so for years and years, we've continued to go back and work with her, had this commitment to making sure that everybody has that initial 4-session foundational course so that we're all speaking the same language from the beginning about how to do this work. And now she has been working with me to plan what we can do next in terms of some deeper level learning, particularly for teachers who work more directly with multilingual learners more frequently. So because of the way that our classes are structured, there are some teachers who work more frequently with bilingual students just because of the way it works out. And so making sure that they have a deeper level of training now that we all sort of have the basics.
And as part of that training to involve families, which are really significant, because if you're coming to school and learning English, which makes sense, and you go home and speaking another language, which also makes sense, you're actually creating a bilingual student, which is terrific. And so how do you, encourage that and keep that balance? So does teachers get that type of instruction as well, or philosophy?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, one of the greatest takeaways, she always shares anonymously the feedback that folks give her and sort of their exit tickets. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we saw there was that people were excited to feel like they better understood how to support both English learning and honor a student's home language as well. And they felt like they had a better sort of grip on when to use English to help kids acquire English language and when to use a native language in order to make sure that content was accessible. So yes, she does that particularly well.
Thanks for the feedback. And just lastly, when teachers, decide that they just can't take advantage of in-house because there's not enough subs or things like that, if they go out, is it something where teachers, not that I'm necessarily proposing anything, have to sit and propose with you what they'd like to take so that you get a chance of knowing, was it valuable when they come back? What did you learn? But it still puts, staff out there to assess if that professional development was something they would have chosen next time. That's part of learning too.
Yes. That's actually a process that we've put in place recently. I mean, we've always had a skeleton process for that, but we've sort of tightened that up to be aligned to the strategic plan. And so there's always been a process where your department head has to approve it and your principal has to approve it. And then it comes to me and I have to approve it. That's always existed. But now we actually have a more concrete process where teachers work with their instructional leader to create a plan for what it is they want to know and how that's aligned to their personal goals, which are aligned to our strategic plan, and then what it is they are thinking about doing with that afterwards, because we know that one and done PD doesn't work. And so if you're going to do something that is a one and done, how does that integrate into a larger plan for your own learning across the year and into the coaching? And so they have now to work with their instructional leader in creating that plan and then following up with their colleagues and with their instructional leader in some specific coaching. So I went and I learned this amazing technique for instructing this particular topic. Now my coach is going to watch me do that. And we're going to talk about what I learned and how I was able to implement it and where I got stuck. And then, kind of research together what the next step would be. So we integrate that into a bigger plan so that it isn't just one and done.
And Amity, thank you for being so committed to professional development for staff and for families and students of the highest quality, because it's something that I think that when schools have a really solid understanding of what they're trying to implement, they can speak to it, and you speak to it beautifully tonight. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Eileen. Any other questions for Amity in regards to her presentation? Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Amity. That was excellent. We appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, moving on to our year-end events. And Jan, you are up.
Well, sort of. We've collected these from the buildings. This is something we do for the Board of Education every year. There are some opportunities for the board to be involved. Certainly, we invite you to graduation and hope that you will be able to attend that night. You should have received an email from Kathy Bonin at the high school about participating in cap and gown if you so choose, and walking in procession with the students, which I think board members will tell you is a wonderful thing. Also, if you have a graduating senior, you have an opportunity to hand your child his or her diploma. So that, you know,
Trevor did the honor this year.
There are very few perks, but that is certainly one of them. So, so that's a really nice thing we get to offer. So if you have any questions, there's an administrator from each building here. If you have any questions about specific events, we are still limiting to some degree our visitors during the school day. A letter is going out reminding folks of that tomorrow. We are trying very hard to include people wherever we can, and we've done a great job of that. But as you might imagine, numbers are increasing a little bit. And there's been some concern and discussion both within our school and at the regional level. So if there's something you're interested in attending and it's not an outdoors event or a big event that's already been pre-planned with all kinds of COVID protection in place, just reach out to me and we'll try to work something out.
Great. Thanks, Jan. Any questions for Jan about the year-end events? I think they're pretty self-explanatory. All right, great. And Trevor, I look forward to your opportunity of giving your son his diploma this year. It's awesome. All right, so moving on, we're going to move to reports by administration. And Heston, as ever, you get to go first. Any color commentary before I open it up for questions?
I'd just like to add a thank you to Julie and the crew for the underground power going in over break and through the town and around the school, and all that was done and really put back seamlessly for us to return on Monday. So that was really a great coordination and appreciated by all the staff at Goodwin.
Awesome. Yeah, excellent job. So any questions for Heston on his report this evening? Go ahead, Eileen.
Sorry for my voice. Not necessarily a question, but what a great initiative to have families come in April for the building tour, just to see some changes so they feel they're still included.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that many families feel disconnected because they haven't been in the building. So this is the second time this year that we did a tour, and it was a great PR for the building and for the district, and families were very appreciative.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eileen.
Thanks, Eileen. Any other questions or comments for Heston? All right, then. Thanks, Heston. It was good to see you tonight.
You too. Thank you.
All right, moving on to Krista and the middle school. Hi, Krista. Any color commentary before I hand it over to the board for questions?
No, I don't think so.
No. Any questions for Krista tonight from the board? Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Just reading through, just a question. What are Pride advisory lessons as given for the social emotional learning?
Sure. So Pride is just the name of our advisory program that we have in place. And in the end, the lessons this year have all focused on social emotional learning. They've been designed by our school counselors along with Leah and our psychologists and social workers. And so, for example, the one coming up this week is aligned to the areas of personal responsibility and goal setting behavior. And the students have a little, it's going to be a gummy worm that is actually has to be saved from this little cup, and they have to work together collaboratively to figure out a plan of how to move this gummy worm from inside of a little gummy lifesaver. So they're basically just social emotional lessons that help build students' ability to collaborate, set goals, work together, take responsibility, and so forth.
All right, okay, that's it for tonight. I won't ask anymore.
Okay, Steve, you're allowed to ask questions, Steve. Go ahead, Eileen.
I know you sparked my interest. So I'm curious, just like the high school does, I don't think it's Pride, but it's sort of, getting together with students to talk about different topics.
Yes.
Are
Exactly.
all grade levels, like 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, all meeting separately at the same time and discussing the same topics, or are they different?
Yes, nope, they discuss the same topic in general. At least this year they have been. In the past, sometimes we've personalized it more to what was needed at the grade level, but
right.
Based on the DESA evaluation that we did earlier, we found that those two areas, personal responsibility and goal-directed behavior, were the areas we needed to focus in on. So our SEL lessons have been really focused in on those.
And do you end up meeting does a whole class meet, or do you take, 7 children, in the smaller groups, or how does that work?
We usually do it by homeroom for a variety of reasons, but we really want to build the collaboration amongst the students within that homeroom as well, and build the team and that sense of community within their homerooms as well.
So there's a variety of homerooms then, right, for each grade?
Yes. There is 4 to 5 homerooms per grade, depending on the size of the grade.
Wow. And how many students are actually in a class?
I'd say on average around 18. We have a variety of support staff as well. So oftentimes there's 2 or 3 adults in each classroom as well when that happens. And there's a lot of discussion.
Thank you so much for your transparency and for your information. It's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Any other questions for Krista? All right. Thanks, Krista. Thanks for joining us tonight. Moving on to Sheila in the high school. I just want to say, Sheila, I love the examples of student work in the report. It's so nice to see. So any color commentary before I open it up for questions?
I have something, but I'll wait till the end of the report if that's okay.
That's fine. Questions for Sheila about her report? Go ahead, Karina.
I saw the blood drive information in support of Declan Rowe. I may have missed it. Who is that, and why are the blood drives in support of that individual?
You may be aware that at the beginning of the year, one of our school counselors, Casey Rowe, had to take an unexpected leave of absence. And I share this because she's, given permission in the past. About 3 days before school started, Casey's then 2-year-old son was diagnosed with leukemia. So that has been a student push to, try to get more and more people to donate blood in honor of Declan.
Thank you for sharing that. I wasn't aware of that. So thank you. And that's a wonderful initiative.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. And things are going along right now in a positive direction, and we just continue to hold out hope that they keep doing that.
Good. And then one question I had that was kind of spurred by seeing the report from the middle school. It seems like there are a lot of field trips that are happening in the near term at the middle school. And it made me wonder about, most especially like the junior trip to Washington, D.C. Has there been any discussion or consideration about the possibility of reinstating that trip or other field trips for the high school kids?
There has been. One of our social studies teachers, Megan Payne, met with Joe and I probably about a month and a half ago or so to ask if she could start, checking in with some travel agencies, it's the equivalent of going out to bid. We don't go out to bid per se, but, she looks for certain packages to begin planning a trip, hopefully for next year. We have talked about if we're able to get the dates that we want, which I believe we're trying to get back to the November time, that possibly we could take the juniors and the seniors next year, because, you know, we've had a couple of graduating classes who haven't gotten to go, but that would come obviously after, you know, we decide on a travel company. And then of course, you may recall in the past, we always present that to the board and get permission to move forward with a trip of that nature. So, but yes, there is talk about getting that going again. In fact, I tried to convince our senior class advisors to just make that the class trip this year and take the seniors to DC. And I don't know, they just didn't seem comfortable with that. You know.
Well, it's exciting to hear that there's discussion about it. So thank you so much.
Sure.
Any other questions for Sheila? Go ahead, Eileen.
Question about the 20-minute meditation.
Yes.
In the anatomy and physiology. I'm just curious to know how that was implemented and the initiative behind it.
That actually, so Amber Sherber and I were having a conversation, and she was letting me know that she had spoken to her students in anatomy and physiology, and they were talking about just the high levels of stress that kids are feeling. So that, in combination with you know, the SEL theme that you heard Krista talking about with the middle school, our advisory lessons are very much going along a similar path there. The self-awareness that the students acknowledged, and the self-advocacy in terms of how can we start to really incorporate more mindfulness as we go through courses of this nature. You know, anatomy and physiology, there's no AP level anatomy and physiology, but it is very much an advanced level class. So Mrs. Sherber started to do a little bit of research on YouTube, not being an experienced meditator herself, was looking for some guidance. So we got her connected with someone who, you know, offered to do some guided meditation for the class virtually. And I think that she had reached out and requested 10 sessions once a week for 10 weeks. And the kids have absolutely latched onto it. So it's interesting. I did one of the sessions with them, and the facilitator started, it's mostly guided meditation, but at one point in the middle, she started with maybe a minute and a half of pure silence. And she let them know, like, it'll just be a minute and a half, and then I'll continue guiding. And every week we'll ramp it up. And I think they're up to like 12 minutes of a silent period. And it's, the students have reported consistently to Amber how much it really helps them reset. And they're doing that. The other thing that you should know is the second semester in anatomy and physiology is a double period. And so with a 90-minute block, you know, they're in there for 3 hours. So that 20 minutes they have found is time very well spent at the beginning of class once a week to get them focused on their week.
It's also interesting. Congratulations on that initiative. It's almost something that could be started at Goodwin all the way up, you know, because not everybody takes anatomy and physiology.
Sure. Well, and that's the reason Amber wanted to pilot that. Sorry to jump in there, Eileen, but you know, almost immediately she had some students from other classes asking about it. And so I think she's hoping to have something like this, you know, spread out in a positive direction so that it's reaching many people.
And I just wanted to congratulate you on the English in Action high school students going to Goodwin. That's a huge PR, but more importantly, you know, as they say, when students can be able to connect with somebody that might know their language, might know their cultures, they feel more included. And I'm sure the feedback from the classroom teachers must be terrific at Goodwin School. And I'd be curious to know the feedback that the high school students are getting themselves, because they have to take a children's book that sometimes they are in a different language, sometimes they're not, but it's really an exciting opportunity.
And I can certainly talk to some of those kiddos and talk to the
Yeah.
teachers in English in Action and ask them to, share out some of the
Feedback.
feedback that the kids are bringing back.
I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
Alan, go ahead.
Sheila, just two quick comments. I love the illustrations of the and the depictions of what students are doing and the pictures that you included in the presentation. So thank you. And it's intriguing to hear about the German the class that's being taught and the comments from the students. It seems to be going really well.
Yes, thank you. And I need to give Joe all the credit for those pictures and the student work. He when he sent that report, I was even compelled to be like, Joe, this is a great report. Thanks for including all the evidence there. So thank you. I will pass that along.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. Any other questions for Sheila? All right, Sheila, I gave you the last word.
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to say thank you to all of you for your support. I will follow up more formally, but I just needed to say that out loud. So thank you for giving me that opportunity, and I'll follow up more in writing.
Thank you,
Sheila, I just had a quick question. Is your awards underclassmen, are they virtual or will they be in person?
As of right now, we're planning on in person, but I know that DLT continues every week to, assess and reassess where things are. We are fortunate to be in a situation where if we did have to go virtual, even at the last minute, we would be able to do that because we're going to use a similar format now going forward. So there will be the PowerPoint is still going to happen in person. We'll have names up in lights, so we can easily switch that to a virtual live format if need be.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you all.
I'll miss your mustard bottles on these calls, Sheila. So I'm going to be looking forward to guest appearances.
I've misplaced the mustard bottle. I don't know where it went, Tara. I think about you every time I think about that bottle.
That's excellent. Thanks for your report, Sheila. It's good to see you. All right, moving on to Amity for curriculum instruction and assessment. Any color commentary, Amity, before I turn it over for questions?
You all have heard plenty from me tonight. I'm good.
Okay. Any further questions for Amity tonight? Go ahead, George.
Am I unmuted?
You're good.
Thank you. Amity, I appreciated that you put in the comments from both the middle school and high school students on the street data, essentially, right, on experiential learning, and they're all very positive. I'm just curious to know whether in the feedback that you're getting, whether there are any more neutral or negative comments, because I think those could be just as telling as well, right? So any of you could share some of their concerns.
Interestingly, I guess I wouldn't say so much negative as there were kids who would say, I really need to learn from a lecture, except that I don't really learn anything from the lecture. I only learn when I actually do the hands-on experience. So we get these kids who kind of feel like they should learn more from the lecture, but their actual experience is that when they're applying what they've learned, they learn more in actually doing. But they struggle with that because they feel like they should be learning more from a lecture. So I think we saw that theme come up again and again, that, in every group of kids, there was a group of kids who felt like traditional lecture style learning is helpful to them. And there's a time and a place for direct instruction. And we don't ever want to forget that. I think it's really important to never go whole hog in one direction without remembering that there's always a balance.
And George, I could echo that during my senior exit interviews. I heard that from a few students. More students said they really liked being hands-on, project-based, long-term projects. But a few said, in essence, these are my words, not theirs, I need more structure than that. I need to be told what to do. And I think that one of the things that we continue to learn is that is dependent upon the child, of course, but it's also dependent perhaps on the content area and how the child interacts with that content area. So, we're still learning and we're still getting that feedback, but I think that the quotes that the energy in the quotes that you see in Amity's report is really powerful.
Thanks.
Thanks, George. Eileen, go ahead.
I just wanted to just frame one comment, and it's come from Goodwin, but I think it applies to everyone, even grown-ups, that if it's something you can explain to someone else and you understand it, they will understand it as well. Because often, or my experience has been, that when you might sit in a lecture on a topic and the presenter may make the topic extremely complex. And it doesn't mean that the student doesn't understand it. It means the way it was presented was complex. So if you take the topic and break it down, it's more like experiential learning. You make it your own. It says the exact same thing, but you feel empowered.
Those fourth graders, they really nailed it. You could really tell us all about it.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Amity?
Great job.
Awesome. Thank you, Amity. Moving on to Julie and our operations, facilities, and finance report. Julie, any commentary before I turn it over for questions?
I like Amity. I think you've heard a lot from me tonight. The only thing I will say is that we'll be coming back to you. Jan and I will be putting together, obviously, some year-end kind of proposal to bring forward, and what the year-end balances will look like. So more to come on that.
Thanks, Julie. Any questions for Julie in regards to her report? All right. Thank you, Julie. Moving on to Kathy for people and professional services. Any commentary, Kathy, before I'd open up for questions?
I don't think so. I think I put it in there. So if there's any questions.
Yeah, any questions for Kathy? Go ahead, Eileen.
I just think it's a very comprehensive report, and I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I'm just curious if you could just abbreviate what the new model will be for extended school services for kids.
So what we're trying to do is have our students who come for their special ed services over the summer be included with their peers. So it's a more inclusive model. They get to enjoy all those enrichment programs, but still get their services. Because last year it was a little like, well, you're coming for your special ed, and if something else was going on, they couldn't really do it. So one of our special ed teachers really is impassioned about this, and so she convinced all her colleagues to do their classes at the middle school during those hours in July. So our students who need special ed services can take those courses and just maybe come out for their hour of reading instruction or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah, we're excited.
And it's much more about inclusion.
Right.
George, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. So I now you mentioned a little bit about the Nest Coffee House up in Deep River that participates.
George, I can't hear you. Did you say a coffee house?
Yeah.
It's a coffee house, right? And so they want to participate. They basically sponsor all your students to come in and help, which is fantastic. And I've read about them in the past. I'm trying to remember, but I think they have something about that family that has connections with learning disability, right? So I think they're more than want to do this, and so I think
right. They have the main owners have children who needed some extra support, so they developed this coffee shop. So it's a great model that our students can go there, learn a lot of job skills. They get evaluated. We're given the feedback, but they also have social opportunities. Couple nights, a month or whatever. So it's a really, really nice inclusive program for them.
Right. No, but my question was, they're obviously very limited, and I'm just wondering whether there's some effort to try and create other opportunities, Saybrook that can provide that. I mean, because it feels like, they're attracting from, the entire regional area, and, they get swamped after a while, right? So we can find whether there's some efforts trying to find like other local business, Saybrook.
We could. There was one in Westbrook that we were going to a few years back, but so there's been different efforts, and it sure is something that we could look at. We do use some of our local places, our students are placed there and do internships. It's just not a program run by students with disabilities.
I see. Right. Thanks. Yeah.
I think we also deliberately, I know Kathy deliberately tries to connect our students with young people from other communities so that they have a larger group of peers to connect with.
Our social, every Friday, our students in our transition program meet with the students from Deep River, Essex, Old Lyme, Clinton, and Westbrook, and do some kind of social activity, because otherwise, we have a few students, but you don't have the same, pool or number of students to engage with. So it is very helpful. Eileen, were you going to ask something?
No, I was going to ask you, Kath. So is it a good coffee house? Do people get to go there and drink coffee?
Oh, yeah.
It's a great coffee house.
And where is it?
It's in Deep River. I'll
Is
send
it on
you
the Main
that.
Street? Okay.
I'll send you that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a
Thank
great.
you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Sandwiches and
yeah.
Well, guess what? You might as well support it.
That's
great.
And I just also want to comment. I think this is obviously very late, but I think there was one of your students participating in the last musical, right, which was a fantastic opportunity, right? Very few schools actually do that. Matter of fact, I don't know of any other school that will do that, right? So, and that kid basically goes to a church, so they would just talk to the kid and parents. He was just beaming, right? So
yeah, I know. I
love
love it.
Experience. It's a great experience.
Good stuff. Thanks, George. Thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
All right. And last up is Jan. And Jan, I also want to give you points for, sorry, Ellen, I see you have a question.
Yeah, just a real quick comment. So it's Teacher Appreciation Week, right? So here we have the administrators working a long day and coming and presenting to us and cherry picking some really cool and interesting things that are going on in their schools. And I just want to say I appreciate that. And I look forward to the reports because, not having children in the school and, just not being in touch and being in the schools, it's great to hear from administrators. So they should have an Administrator Appreciation Week, Jan, if they don't have one. So, thank you.
Thanks, Alan. That was very nice. All right, so moving on to Jan's report. And I was just going to say, Jan, that you get extra marks too for having pictures in your report. I liked your pictures. And I also did want to give a shout out to Michelle and Trent for their work on the student awards stuff, and also to Matthew's brother who was recognized in that. But that was great. It was great to hear. And Michelle and Trent obviously are gems. So.
Oh yeah. Very, very fortunate. Very fortunate. And I agree with you, Alan. Administrators probably should get a month, especially after the last 2 years that they've been through. I have nothing to add. I think it speaks for itself, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. So questions for Ann. Go ahead, Eileen.
Yeah. So one question I have, and maybe it's not anything that you can share right now, but meeting with staff to really talk about leadership for Saybrook High Schools next year.
The leadership transition. Yep. So I did meet with the staff and asked essential questions. What are the qualities that you're looking for in the leadership team that will be in place next year? And just let them riff about it. And they did and gave me some very good input. We've done a survey to students, a survey to parents. Those will close Wednesday, and we'll see how it goes after that.
Great. And my last question is just that you were conducting interviews, the exit interviews. So I'm curious, will some of those exit interviews be shared, with the board maybe next fall or whenever, so that we can know what they're thinking?
So as I do every year, I will summarize the results and share them with you. I was hoping to do that before we end the academic year.
Okay, no rush. I just be curious to know their feedback. Thanks again.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, Eileen. Any other questions for Jan in regards to her report? Go ahead, George.
Just a quick, and again, I think what you wrote for that bill was actually very well done. Just if you could just keep us posted on the status of that bill. I think it makes a lot of sense, right? It has a good intent. If it's else, it's more detrimental than good. So at this point.
Happy to do that. Yes, I agree. It has an excellent intent, and I support it in theory 100%. I just think the funding has to come along with it.
Mhm.
Right.
I agree.
And Jan, what does it mean that when you ghost wrote it?
Well, it was done for CAPS. So it was about 10 o'clock at night, and we were quickly looking to put something together. And so I banged that out. The old English teacher gets to do the writing, and sent that on. And the following morning, before they met and before it went out on the floor, they had some language to work with, and it actually stopped that bill for that day. But here we are, not even a week later, and it's back.
Okay. Thanks so much for having that initiative for us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, George. Oh, we don't hear you. I know.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yes, I appreciated this, chance report, and something that's sort of eating me a little bit. I'm not sure why. The flag that Trent showed. This is going way back, but the flag that Trent showed when we it's a 48-star flag, I believe. I just want to double check. Maybe I'm wrong, but I could be wrong. But it's been eating me in the back of my mind for the last hour. So I just thought I'd double check that. But if I'm wrong, but if people want to use the same flag, by all means. But I think it's 48. But yeah.
Well, we will color 2 more flags in and put it back up in 2 weeks. 2 more stars.
That is awesome, George. That is awesome.
Only George could have counted them that quickly.
Honestly.
That's awesome. Thank you, George. All right. So is there any other questions for Jan? That's great. That was awesome. All right. So if there's no other questions for Jan, before we move on to our reports by board and committees, I'd like to let the administrators go, and then obviously Matthew and McKenna as well. Although Julie, I'm sorry you get stuck with us. But so thank you to our administrators and Matthew and McKenna for joining us tonight.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Great. So first up on the board reports, George, anything from budget and fiscal?
I mean, just a really quick reminder. I think the referendum date has been set for Tuesday, May 10th. I'm not exactly sure the time. I think
12 to 8.
Thank you. Right. High school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
And the town meeting, the budget, the hearing itself is this coming Monday at 6:30 at the middle school.
What date is that? That's
Monday the 2nd is the hearing at 6:30.
On Monday. Yeah, gotcha.
And the referendum's the following week on the 10th, 12 to 8. And George, thank you so much for plugging that with this group.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, George. Eileen, any report from CABE?
CABE continues just to have board check-ins, or for board members just to have a conversation with one another about some of the initiatives that they're experiencing. And it's really a good education, because many of the cities and towns are not as fortunate to have the leadership that we have.
Great. Thank you, Eileen.
Yeah, sure.
All right, Alan, facilities. You're at mute. You are on mute, Alan. Nope. Okay, so you can do that now. I don't know if you can unmute him, Trent.
Sorry about that. It
Here we
wasn't
go.
me. My mouse wouldn't get me to my next screen to get to the Zoom. I was like, what is going on? So I think my mouse is out of battery. Sorry about that. Facilities met on April 1st, no fooling. And Julie gave, and Jan, as much of what was talked about tonight, the 2 waivers that were proposed and are approved tonight. And Julie outlined a number of proposed funding initiatives for the year. And I won't get into details, but it's an extensive list. And, of course, the air conditioning was part of that, and many other items that were listed. So It was appreciated. We didn't have any we didn't have any motions to put forward, but it was a great update in terms of all the capital projects that are being worked on and being proposed. We did give a brief update on the light committee and what's been the progress that's been made there. We haven't met in a while. We're meeting tomorrow night as a committee, the lighting committee, and there's been so much work going on behind the scenes between Jan and Carl and Julie and Scott Gingrich in terms of conduit and bringing in power, everything in preparation for what hopes to be some real groundbreaking, if you will, to the turf and starting to the construction. But Julie, can you give just a brief, you provided a nice timeline in terms of all the things that are happening. But you also mentioned the supply chain issues and such, but your pre-planning was so good that, we seem to be in a good place. But can you just give a brief update on some of the initiatives that you've taken in terms of the lights?
So last week, really, really good news. Last week was a really good week, even though it was a really busy week, but we did locate the conduit. It does go under the field. It does go across, which I am more than grateful for, because I had my doubts about how that base material came up during our redoing of that whole initiative. And so we brought a special piece of equipment in, and they ran water from one side. And when I started to hear it gurgle, I have actually a video. I can't play it for too many people. I sound like a crazy person, but I was so excited because I heard the water coming through, and sure enough. So that's going to really help expedite things. We are now planning to figure out the layout. The biggest issue we will have is a crane has to come in and set the poles in the very large and long holes that get dug by an auger. And so we've got to make sure the crane can go out on the field and the field can be protected. So we're going to go do some measuring, hopefully tomorrow or Thursday, and order those mats. But the lights were initially supposed to come in the end of May. The date we've received is July 11th. So we want to be ready to roll come July 11th. And so all the work we're doing now, there'll be some digging. As soon as baseball's over, they'll bring power from the street to those two lovely pipes that we found in the ground, and get the power to go across to the other side of the field, as well as power to the near side of the field. So we're moving along. I mean, some of the preliminary work, it doesn't sound like much, but a lot of preparation. We've already ordered all of the conduit for that project, which should be in sometime in May. And so we're waiting for Eversource to come and move, and Frontier has to put the pole in. Eversource then has to bring the power onto the pole. So there's a bunch of steps that happen and a lot of coordinating, but it's all lined up, and with our fingers crossed, things are moving well.
Thanks, Julie, for that. Jan, did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to say, I think we all need to give Julie a pat on the back, because all of her work has been underground. Nothing is showing. Nothing looks significant, but there's been a ton of work going on. You just have to be a mole to see it.
Well, I, for one, I do want to see the video, Julie. So if you can share it with me at some point, I think it's awesome that you're excited about it, and everybody else in town is as well. Almost everybody else. One other quick update: Monument Way. So an unofficial term that we're using for the dedication area, where the bricks will go and the plaques to recognize the various levels of donors. So Julie and Jan and Tara, myself and Scott Gingrich met a couple weeks ago in bitter cold weather, and we braved the elements and we walked the area, and we had some really good ideas. Pete Rothman came up with some really cool kind of ideas, and we shared them with that group on that day at the high school. So I think there'll be much more to come in that regard, and that's an important piece to finish this project. So As plans get drawn up and ideas get put to paper, we'll be sure to share with the rest of the board. So yeah, thank you, Julie, for your work, and Jan. That's all I got.
Alan and Julie, good update from our facilities team. So nothing on my part to share from Learn, although I saw in your report, Jan, that you presented to Learn. Of course, I wasn't there when I should have been. But Trevor has kindly agreed to represent our board with Learn going forward. So it's a valuable resource, and I'm very glad that we'll have representation on their board. So thank you very much, Trevor.
I will ask Trent to include the presentation to Learn in the archive at the end of the year. So at least we have a record. It was very positive, and it was about all the great stuff that we learned in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed it, Jan, but that's awesome. And it's a great group of people, and they've got, I think some really great ideas and things that we can learn from them. So Karen's not here, so nothing from strategic planning. I've got nothing from demographics. Jan, anything you want to share on Karen's behalf in regards to personnel?
I know that I spoke with her and that she intends to connect with Steve and Trevor to make sure that, everyone has a clear understanding of the last phases of my evaluation, which are coming up very soon. That's it.
Thanks, Jan. Eileen, anything from policy?
Policy committee met this evening. And we talked about the student dress policy. That was definitely a highlight. That will come to the board sometime in May. And we actually talked about a series of policies that just had some language changes regarding the use of cannabis and how it's no longer a felony. Isn't that right, Jan?
Mm-hmm.
I think the best way to describe it is it's to be treated, possession, use, and distribution are to be treated the same way they would be treated if it were alcohol.
Mm-hmm. And we had a lovely discussion, and policy committee is a great committee to be on. And thank you, Jan, for your help.
Thanks, Eileen. And I have nothing specific to report from the chairman's role. So with that, I'd like a motion to enter into executive session, inviting in Jan and Julie, moved by Steve. And do I have a second? Second by Alan. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we're going to disconnect from this meeting like we did before. Trent has sent us out another meeting link. So you're going to leave this meeting completely. We're going to go join that meeting for executive session. And then when that meeting is over, we'll come back to this meeting to finish up our board meeting this evening. So I will see you all over. Check your email.
If you have any issues, please feel free to give me a call. I put my cell phone number in the email that I sent with instructions on how to get into the Google Meet and how to get back to this meeting. And I'll see you all when you return.
All right, we'll see you over in the other meeting.
Eileen, you need to exit the Zoom meeting.
I know I'm exited, and now I'm trying to get to the email. Right? Right.
Yep.
Hopefully, I remember I was just thinking about you because I thought the last time I had some trouble. So I'm going to the email, unless I can just do it on my phone.
But don't get into the Google Meet while you're still in the Zoom, because it'll mess up your computer.
Oh God, I don't know how to do it. So should I just do it on my phone?
You could, but because
You
you're
know
an
what? Here,
executive.
this is what I'm going to do. I can talk to you. I basically am not in my computer. I'm going to go to my other computer that I set up. And maybe
But
that'll make.
I have to kick you out because I'll still be able to hear you in executive session.
All right. So then kick me out, and then I just probably need help getting in. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Jim, has the executive session ended?
You know, I thought it ended. Everybody was getting off, and I'm kind of wondering why they're not on.
Was there a recess or something?
No, I don't think so. Let me pop out and go back into the Google Meet and see if I got out prematurely. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
I was wondering what's going on here.
Like we made it back through the wormhole.
Especially with your space background. We seem to end up in a black hole.
Logging in, logging back out, and logging back in again definitely seems to be working much better. Maybe the first time we did this, where we just basically just sort of left the other one. That just hung my system up so badly. This was working better.
Well, and Trent makes it so easy with having those 2 emails right at the top. It really helps us a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
Lessons
Zoom,
learned.
right, exactly. Zoom to Zoom I can do. When I go Google to Zoom or Zoom to Google, that's when I tend to get problems.
The COVID era has brought a lot of technological, well, I've never done that before, but I think this will work, and go from there.
Exactly. We all
So we're
learn.
missing Jim. We're missing Jim.
Jim and Eileen.
Eileen's here.
No, Eileen's here.
Oh, right in the middle of my screen.
Oh, there's
Up
Jim.
here comes Jim. Good. Okay. So with that, it is 9:23 p.m. and we are exiting executive session. So at this point, I would like to call for a motion to approve the Director of Operations, Facilities, and Finance employment agreement as presented. So moved by Alan, second by Eileen. Discussion? So go ahead, Steve.
I would like to make an amendment to that and increase the cost share to by 1% each following year. So it would be 14, 15, and 16%.
In years 1, 2, and 3 of the contract. Do we have a second for that motion? For that amendment? George, are you seconding the amendment? Okay.
I am.
All right.
I apologize. Can you repeat the particulars of that just so I can get it for the record?
Yes, the cost share in year 1 will increase by 1% to 14%, year 2 to 15%, and year 3 to 16% for health insurance.
Thank you very much.
So any further discussion? Okay, so I'll call the vote on the amended motion. All in favor of the amended motion, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Nay.
Nay.
Hey,
All right, the nays have it. So I don't know if we have to go back and make the motion again to approve the contract as presented, or if the amended failed and we just go to vote on the original. I believe it's we vote
I
on the
think the
original.
amendment failed.
Yep.
And now it's a vote on the original.
On the original. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
all those in favor of the approving the contract as presented, say aye or yay.
Aye.
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 And those opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the executive assistant to the superintendent employment contract as presented. Moved by Eileen, seconded by Trevor. Discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That was unanimous. Lastly, I'd like to put for or ask for a motion to approve the stipend for our Director of Communications as presented. Moved by Eileen, seconded by Trevor. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Again, that was unanimous, so moved. All right, thank you very much. Just a reminder, looking at our reminders, that we have our next Board of Education meeting is going to be on May 10th at 7 p.m. That meeting is going to be in person, and Karen will have more information to follow in preparation for that meeting. And with that, I'd like a motion to adjourn. Moved by Eileen, seconded by Trevor. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Awesome.
And just note, that meeting's the night of the referendum. No, the vote, right? The town vote.
No. Is it?
5:10.
Yeah, it is every
Yeah.
year. It is every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So vote
Yeah.
before the meeting.
Vote before the meeting and then come to the meeting.
And the goal is to try to get out by 8 o'clock so I can run over to the polls and find out how we did.
Okay.
Love it.
Wishful thinking, Jan.
I gotta be there. I know.
What time does that meeting start? 5?
7. It's at 7, Eileen.
We can do it. We can do
All
it.
right, then let's do it.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Good night.
Night, everyone.
Night.